9. Alan Blackthorne. 35-year-old Sheila Bullish married Texas millionaire Alan Blackthorne in 1982. However, the couple started having problems in the late 80s after Blackthorne was arrested for hitting Sheila. He pleaded guilty and claimed that it was a one-time thing. But by then, Sheila was done with the marriage. She filed for divorce, and the ensuing court battle was ugly. Police were called to the estranged couple's home numerous times to mediate heated arguments. Sheila ultimately won custody of the couple's kids, and she met a new man who she moved to Florida to be with. Sheila was trying to move on with her life, but Blackthorne couldn't let go of the failed relationship. He couldn't stand to lose, and he continued to harass Sheila even after she moved away and remarried. In 1997, the millionaire hired a private investigator to track down Sheila's whereabouts. 3 weeks later, someone shot Sheila dead and cut her throat right in front of her kids. People were quick to point the finger at Blackthorne, but he had an alibi. He was golfing that day, and there were witnesses who could testify to it. But all it did was make detectives question whether he hired someone to kill his ex-wife. Investigators uncovered evidence that he'd offered to pay people to murder Sheila on numerous occasions. A man named Jose Luis del Toro agreed to do it for $14,000, and Blackthorne seemed to think there would be no way to connect him to the crime. To avoid blame, he tried to point the finger at Sheila's new husband, Jamie Bullish. Del Toro was located in Mexico and extradited to the U.S., where he confessed to the crime. He said that he had watched Sheila from afar before approaching and killing her, and he almost backed out after seeing that she was a loving mother. But in the end, he made the horrifying decision to follow through with the murder. Blackthorne continued to deny any involvement in Sheila's death, even after being convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and receiving 2 life sentences. He died in prison in 2014 at the age of 59, but his cause of death was never disclosed. 8. William Booz. 55-year-old Florida native William Booz landed himself in hot water with the law in 2022 when he was accused of stealing millions of dollars from wealthy clientele who utilized his services as a private jet travel broker. His alleged theft began in 2017 and went unnoticed until he tried cheating a Manhattan art gallery out of $1 million by booking unauthorized charter flights to its American Express account. Company employees noticed and confronted Booz, who claimed the charges were made in error and promised to refund the money. He sent the gallery a collection of forged documents to make it look like he'd redeposited the funds back into their account, when in reality he never did. In 2020, Booz allegedly forged a journalist's signature on 2 charter flight contracts and scammed the company out of $63,000 in order to pay for travel expenses. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg accused Booz of thinking he could fly above the law by making unauthorized charges with his clients' credit cards, amounting to over $4.5 million in thefts over a 3-year period. He was ultimately charged with grand larceny, criminal possession of a forged instrument, and several other crimes. At the moment, it seems as though he's still waiting for sentencing. 7. Philip Barron. In 2013, a drug boss was handed an 18-year prison sentence after it was discovered that he'd made more than 30 million pounds, $36.6 million, smuggling heroin and cocaine into the UK. British drug kingpin Philip Barron was among a small group of very rich men who headed a massively profitable international drug trafficking ring. He owned homes in England, Ireland, and Spain, where he carried out 6-figure drug transactions while posing as a legitimate businessman. Barron and his associates often corresponded in code to prevent authorities from understanding what they were talking about. They were extremely organized in everything they did, and while it helped them get away with their illegal activities, it also helped get them caught. Investigators managed to uncover the organization's meticulous financial records, which detailed specific drug transactions as well as details about laundered money. Based on the information they revealed, the men moved 18.4 tons, 16,692 kilograms, or 16.7 metric tons of cannabis over a 17-month period, profiting to the tune of around 3.2 million pounds, $3.9 million. Barron is said to have made around 30 million pounds, $36.6 million, from the cocaine trade. Authorities believe Barron founded the criminal ring around 2000. During the enterprise's heyday, the group lived carefree, lavish lifestyles. One of Barron's associates, Paul Yearsley, was extremely confident that law enforcement wouldn't catch up with him, even to the point of being boastful. He went as far as to feature his multi-million-dollar mansion that he bought with drug profits in a home magazine. The headline of the article he was featured in was "Living the Dream." But the dream didn't last forever for Yearsley or any of the other men involved in the gang. Yearsley was eventually convicted of drug smuggling and was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison. Barron received an 18-year prison sentence in 2013, and 27 other members were also criminally punished. They won't have fancy mansions to return home to upon their release because the British government took control of their assets and is moving to sell them as a way to seize some of the operation's profits. 6. Jeremy DeWitt. Jeremy DeWitt lost his opportunity to become a police officer when he was convicted of crimes that automatically disqualified him from the job position. The Florida man didn't let it stop his imagination from running wild, though, and he pretended to be a cop to his heart's content, even after it started landing him in some serious trouble. He served his first sentence for impersonating an officer in 2003, but he jumped right back into it when he regained his freedom. DeWitt even started his own force of wannabes called the Metro State Special Services, who rode around in cruisers and on motorcycles that looked like real police vehicles, equipped with flashing lights and sirens. They made sure to avoid using their lights in certain jurisdictions. In other words, where they were more likely to run into cops. When the police did confront them, they maintained that they were just a volunteer group of funeral escorts. This band of fake officers became such a big concern that some even compared it to a cult. In one YouTube video, DeWitt can be seen weaving through traffic on a motorcycle at high speed with his lights flashing, while he orders members of the public to pull over. At one point, he called a woman in a car an inappropriate name. Based on the shocked look on her face, she likely believed DeWitt was a real cop, and she dialed 911 to report a member of their department going off the rails. His YouTube channel reportedly contains a plethora of disturbing videos of him pulling over and harassing civilians, and otherwise asserting authority he doesn't actually have. By 2021, DeWitt had at least 10 open cases against him throughout Florida for impersonating a police officer. However, he cut a deal with prosecutors and received an 18-month prison sentence, followed by 4 years of probation. Under the agreement, he would not be allowed to own any police-like gear or equipment, and he was prohibited from presenting himself as an officer in any way, shape, or form. Just months after his release, he was arrested for violating his probation since he failed to remove videos of himself pretending to be a cop from his YouTube channel. But DeWitt claimed that he was hacked and that he no longer had access to the channel. When he was taken into custody, he said, "I'm not going back to prison today, I'm not." But he didn't have a choice in the matter, and he was held without bond. 5. Tracy Hunter. During her time as a judge in Hamilton County, Ohio's juvenile court system in 2014, Tracy Hunter sought information about a case against her brother Stephen, a youth corrections officer who was accused of striking a young offender. Tracy allegedly passed her findings on to Stephen, who was ultimately fired. She was accused of misusing her position and influence to pass confidential information on to her brother. Possibly in an effort to help him keep his job, Hunter apparently used her position to acquire documents about Stephen's accuser. and she then shared what she found with her brother. In 2014, she was convicted of having an unlawful interest in a public contract. The case languished in court for years as Hunter appealed her conviction. A judge upheld the ruling in 2020, and she was subsequently sentenced to 6 months in prison. Hunter has remained adamant that she broke no laws. When the sentence was handed down, she went limp in the courtroom and had to be carried out. Her case remains controversial to this day, with many believing that racism was a factor in the decisions and rulings against Hunter. However, others have accused her of playing victim to the system. 4. John Pickens. When the wife of a school resource officer in Tennessee reported her husband for abuse in 2022, authorities took her claims seriously, even though the case involved one of their own, as he was a 16-year veteran of the Knoxville Police Department. The woman told investigators that her husband, John Pickens, choked her during an argument to the point where she couldn't breathe, and that he hurt her again the next day, leaving her with visible injuries. Pickens was put on administrative leave, and his police powers were revoked pending the outcome of the case. In the end, he was charged with aggravated domestic assault. It marked the latest in a series of cases involving criminal allegations against Knoxville police officers. Just a month before Pickens was arrested, 2 of the department's officers were hit with drunk driving charges within a few hours of each other. In another case, 2 officers were accused of helping to cover up racism going on within the workplace. One of them resigned during an investigation, and the other was fired. Knoxville Police Chief Paul Noel said that the alleged actions of the officers who've come under scrutiny in recent years don't reflect the department's mission and values. He reassured the public that police aren't above the law and that those who commit crimes are going to be held accountable. Altogether, 10 officers have resigned or been fired since 2019 due to suspicions or allegations of misconduct. 3. Mary O'Connor. Tampa Police Chief Mary O'Connor and her husband were riding their golf cart without a license plate one evening in 2022 when they were approached by Pinellas County Deputy Larry Jacoby. During their conversation with the deputy, O'Connor asked him if his body cam was recording, and he confirmed that it was. O'Connor then quickly flashed her badge and identified herself as the Tampa Police Chief, then said, "I'm hoping you'll just let us go tonight." The deputy decided to comply with the chief's request, and before parting ways, O'Connor handed Jacoby her card and said, "Call me if you ever need anything, seriously." She likely wasn't expecting people to find out about the incident, but they did, and she admitted that her way of handling things could be viewed as inappropriate. In a statement, O'Connor said that she had expressed great remorse to the mayor, and she apologized to Tampa's residents for her poor judgment. She further added that she didn't mean to put the deputy in an uncomfortable position and offered to pay any citations that her mistakes warranted. In the end, O'Connor requested the same discipline that any officer would receive for similar conduct. 2. Eugene Price. A crime boss and his associates thought they were untouchable, but they were brought down by English police in 2013. Eugene Price was the leader of a crime ring based out of St. Helens that supplied large amounts of illegal drugs to the area. He knew that the police were aware of who he was and that they suspected him of serious crimes, but he thought he was smart enough not to get caught. He felt this way because he was far removed from the street-level operations of his organization. Police engaged in a long and complicated investigation to identify the gang's hierarchy and uncover proof of the high-ranking members' activities. In addition to distributing drugs, Price and his henchmen had access to illegal guns, which they used to maintain order among the organization, as well as during turf wars with rival gangs. Most of the criminals working under Price were members of a traveler community, known for being tight-knit and wary of outsiders. So they weren't exactly the easiest group of suspects for investigators to tap into. It took some time, but they eventually obtained the evidence they needed to put together a criminal case against 8 people, including Price, in 2013. after taunting police about how they'd never catch up to him. He was convicted of conspiracy to possess a firearm with intent to endanger life, conspiracy to commit arson, and conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison as a result. For their involvement in the crimes, his associates received varying sentences ranging from 4 years to 21 years. 1. Shelby Coniglio. Officers in Florida pulled a vehicle over in the middle of the night in early 2022 and found themselves face to face with an off-duty Pinellas County Sheriff's deputy who seemed to be intoxicated. They would later describe how 26-year-old Shelby Coniglio allegedly displayed telltale signs of drunkenness, including slurred speech and bloodshot eyes. They also reported that she had a distinct odor of booze and she appeared to be unsteady on her feet. Coniglio did poorly on field sobriety tests and had a blood alcohol content of 0.2, more than twice the legal limit for driving in Florida. She was consequently charged with 1 count of DUI with a BAC over 0.15. And she ended up losing her job in accordance with the sheriff's office policy. Records show that she began working for the sheriff less than 4 years before her arrest and was a deputy in the patrol division. Would you rather find out that your partner was lying about having a background in law enforcement, or find out that their ex died under mysterious circumstances and that the case is still unsolved? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.